Hey, what's going on, guys? Coach Johnny back with the Performance Plus podcast. Today I'm joined by Zach again, and we're going to ask him lots of questions. This is an Ask Me Anything episode. Many of you guys DM'd us, emailed us questions that you want Zach to answer. So let's start off with a personal one, Zach. How did you start the Barbell Physio? Like, where did the idea come from, and what brought you to where you are now, and kind of what ultimately got you here?
Yeah, I started it in physical therapy school. There were a couple other physical therapy related blogs, and I just thought at the time, like, I come from this strength and conditioning background that most PTs don't have, and now I've gone through PT school. Like, how do I start to share information kind of between those two things? And how do I differentiate myself from other people in this profession in terms of like getting the right job and those sorts of things? So it just really started from that, just trying to put out some different information that I knew, and it grew more than I ever thought, hoped, or wished it would have. It's been a crazy ride, and I feel like every day I just wake up and I'm like, oh, this is a little bigger than it was yesterday. Wonder how that happened. Let's see if we can continue doing this. I've just been blessed to work with great people like you and Pamela and all my other business partners. I'm
That's
fortunate
really
that.
that. At what point? This is a me question, not anybody else. But at what point were you like, oh man, people are actually reading this?
So this is going to be weird. The first point that I actually thought like, all right, I'm making an impact was I put out a post on social media that just got a ton of hate, and specific, it was a prone training bar press. So I'm laying on my stomach, pressing a bar behind the neck overhead, which just crushes your upper back. And I remember somebody saying like, if you did this in my gym, I would come smack you. And I was so excited by that like people were getting mad at what I was saying and what I was doing, that I actually wrote in the comments, "Here's my address. Come on over anytime you want." And then my wife saw it and she chewed me out for that. But yeah, that's probably my first time that I felt like I was actually onto something there. I
That's
mean, I
amazing.
still remember being excited when like I hit 3,000 followers on Instagram. I thought that was like the coolest thing ever.
What?
So
Yeah, that's nuts. I can't even imagine just because you've grown so far, like 3,000 followers. Like that's, my neighbor has 3,000 followers on Instagram now, and all he does is post photos of his kids. So, uh, how did you get started writing for the CrossFit Journal? Did that happen around the same time as Barbell Physio, or did that happen because of it?
probably about 2 years after writing Arnold's Pulse for Barbell Physio. Really, I've just been reading the CrossFit Journal for a long time, and I then randomly one day saw that they had a way for you to submit articles, and I got to thinking like, well, I made this giant presentation in physical therapy school on the biomechanics of the snatch. I bet CrossFit Journal would like somebody to write this nerdy article on the snatch, and so I approached them, and they said yes. And after I wrote that, they said, well, what do you think about writing an article on this? And it just kind of snowballed into, I don't know, 6, 8 articles or so. And then I met Pamela, and I knew Pamela worked for CrossFit. I said, hey, we should write articles together. And so then Pamela and I wrote probably a dozen articles for them together.
That's awesome. Um,
Well, it was such an amazing resource. Um,
yeah,
Still is, because still a lot of that stuff's available. But it's just so cool how much CrossFit was putting out free information all the time.
uh, that I think that gets really underappreciated, like how the breadth and depth of the CrossFit Journal is. There's so many like answers to common questions that people have, and I think when I met you, it's 2015, I had read the shoulder article like at that point, and then like, oh my god, like changed my understanding of everything. So, uh,
I think if you went back and read all the CrossFit Journal articles, you would be smarter than 99% of people that graduate from college with a bachelor's degree in exercise
agreed,
science.
agreed.
There's some groundbreaking stuff in there. Greg Glassman's "What is Fitness?" Sickness, Wellness, Fitness Continuum. Like, I think if you work in the fitness space in any sport of fitness, or in the medical world in any sort, like, you have got to read Sickness, Wellness, Fitness Continuum and CrossFit Journal. I think both of those were in the same journal issue,
Yeah, exact same journal issue.
which,
Yeah.
God, I love that article so much.
Yeah. I and the simplicity of it too is absolutely absurd. Like, and I still go back and read it from time to time, and you're just like, oh my God, like how did he realize this? Like at what point did he come up with like, oh my God, as we get this trend towards fitness, so our
Mhm.
wellness changes. It's like, and you go into the space that in the medical space, like people are approaching it with such a different, I don't know, different methodology. Like it's just
Mhm.
shocking what
Very.
you're reading. So, um, all right. So, how did all of that stuff? You said you met Pamela. You guys wrote articles together. Is that what brought you to Performance Plus?
Yeah, so I was working at another physical therapy clinic in Charlotte around the time I was writing these CrossFit Journal articles. And I was following Pamela on Instagram, but I had never met her before. And I'm walking to go grab my next patient from the front, and I look over at this other treatment table, and there's Pamela on the treatment table. So I go up to her and say, look, I can't really talk right now, but here's my card. Shoot me an email. I write articles for CrossFit Journal. We need to get lunch. And she wasn't weirded out by that. So she sent me an email later that day, and we got lunch. And I said, look, we should do some more work for CrossFit Journal together. And we came up with an outline of articles that we thought would be really valuable to write. Did that, and when we got done with them, like I thought that was it. I was like, cool, we're making a little bit of money when CrossFit pays us to write these journal articles. That was fun. See ya. Pamela said, no, Zach, if people want to read these articles and we get the feedback that we just got from them from so many athletes, like people want more of this stuff. And, there's a big hole in the CrossFit world where people want to develop this next skill, but it's a lot of times really hard to bump up to that next skill when you're doing the daily WODs and, you're only seeing the kipping pull-up show up once a week or every other week. You're only seeing the muscle up every 2 or 3 weeks. And so it's hard for some people to hit that next big goal. And so we just started saying, like, we can write little accessory plans that fill the gaps that normal CrossFit programming doesn't for that specific individual. And it's been a blast.
It's been a blast, man. It's so cool. So cool to hear the organic story of that meeting and like how it just the morphology into what it is now
I
and
think it
how
was Zoe's Kitchen too.
Oh yeah. What's your go do you
Orzo Pasta
yeah, okay.
used to
Awesome.
be at. I haven't been there in a while.
I haven't been there in a while either. There used to be one by my house. It closed. It's been years, but Zoe's Kitchen is delicious. All right, so let's do a little bit more fun stuff. Fran or Grace?
Can I go Diane? Um, I've actually not. So I don't think I've done Grace. Fran, I've done twice, and it has probably been 5 years since I've done Fran.
Yeah.
Fran is my least favorite CrossFit workout
Yep.
because you just know that you're going to feel awful for 30 minutes afterwards, even though it's only going to take you 4 minutes or less to do it. Um, my favorite CrossFit workout is Diane. 21:59, deadlifts at 225. So I'm a strong deadlifter, so that's a lightweight for me to do, and I'm pretty good at handstand push-ups. I should do Grace sometime.
You should do Grace sometime.
Second least favorite behind Fran is Air Force. Have you
Yeah.
done
Oh,
Air Force?
we've talked about that on here before. The
I will.
five
I will do Fran again. I will never do the Air Force workout again.
movement.
The last time I did it, I crawled to a trash can because my legs would not work and vomited. I did it with a games athlete. That was a horrible idea.
Uh, Dude, I'm trying to still like understand how you got in the pain cave that bad on that workout because I feel like it's so rate limiting. Like your quads or shoulders generally will blow up before you get to like a level of lactate where you're gonna vomit. Like
Yeah,
that's
let me pull it up so I can actually tell people what it is. It is 20 thrusters at 95 pounds, 20 sumo deadlift high pulls, 20 push jerks, 20 overhead squats, and 20 front squats. But at the top of each minute, you have to do 4 burpees. Um, Really, what it was is I knew in that last minute, I was probably like 5 reps away from being done. And I knew that I would need to rest. But if I rested and didn't push through and finish it in that minute, I was going to have to do 4 more burpees. And if you want to motivate me to do a little bit more work, I typically do most workouts at like 85, 90%. I don't typically go 100% every workout. But if there's a penalty on it, and I know I'm going to have to do a little bit more work, I'm going to push
they
a little harder. And I did 5 more reps of that last front squat set than I should have to beat the buzzer, and I do 4 more burpees. And those 5 reps did me in. I'm pretty sure I had asthma attack too. Like asthma attack, can't walk, crawled to the trash can.
You're the only person in the 12 years that I've been doing CrossFit that I know that has got hurt that bad off that workout. So I feel like it needs to be re-examined. We all should do it again and see if we can get to your level. To use study terms, you're an N=1 on that, and I want to know, is it really that bad? So that's
You've
crazy.
done it?
I've done the Air Force. Oh yeah. I did the Air Force workout with a Latvian swimmer, Olympic swimmer, and he absolutely crushed me on it. And then sat down on the floor next to me. He did it so fast, like 4 minutes, 5 minutes, something, and sits down and starts taking off his wrist wraps and talking to me like about lunch. And I'm like literally like, bro, I can't. I'm just trying to get through this thing, and
He
you're sitting
literally
there
threw
talking
salt on
about
the wound there, huh?
yeah. Dude, so much salt. Fucking terrible. All right, so we'll go last one, and this one is just kind of tying back into the CrossFit Journal Barbell Physio article history. But you've written top articles on topics ranging from dissecting overhead squats or dissecting squats, overhead position, dissecting the snatch, the athletic hip, BFR, and your favorite fitness apps. What's the one article that you've written that you wish that every trainer would read that you think would help?
I wrote an article on knee valgus during squats. Is knee valgus always bad in weightlifting? And that would be the one I want everybody to read. Um, Essentially, when we look at individuals squat and their knees come in as they go down into a squat or come out of a squat, we typically consider that a squat fault. It puts a little bit more pressure on the knees, and we tend to coach athletes out of that position. But you'll notice if you look at a lot of elite lifters, especially weightlifters, that almost all of them go into a little bit of valgus when they stand up out of the bottom of a squat. And so I wrote an article about that in 2016 and put that out about why I think they do that. And I think that that's important because when you look at elite athletes, sometimes they're going to do stuff that normal people don't do or consider faults. And you need to think through, why might they be doing that? Is that fault actually giving them some sort of performance advantage? Because it's not as black and white as we always want to make things seem like.
Yeah.
And so that's probably the article I'm proudest of putting out. I actually wrote it probably 6 months before I published it, but I had not heard anybody else, and I'm sure somebody else had talked about it, but I hadn't heard anybody else talk about it at that time. And I was too nervous to put it out because I thought the backlash I was going to get was going to be too much. And then I was on Travis Mash's, he's a really well-known Olympic weightlifting coach. I was on his podcast and he asked me about it. And since I said it publicly on the podcast, my opinions on it, I decided to publish it. But I think that's a good read.
So in the physio world, right? People look at that as like potential for ACL tear, like that kind of valgus fault. Like, just to give us a little insight, you think it's safe? Like,
so the valgus fault at like really high load, like change of direction stuff might cause ACL tears. And in a squat, I think even if you go into valgus, I don't think you're going to tear your ACL. It's more about like pressure on the patellofemoral joint. I think it is safe, but I think there's 2 different types of valgus position. There's like just to be a little stereotypical here, like your 13-year-old soccer player that comes in, and when you have that individual squat down, like knees go in on the way down, and they stay in all the way down, they stay in all the way up. Versus if you look at any elite Olympic lifter, like Maddie Rogers is a great example of this. She does it quite a bit. She'll squat down and her knees track in line with her toes. And as she comes out of the bottom of the hole, her knees quickly go in and quickly go out. And I think that happens because the adductors are really important in hip extension when we're in the bottom of a really deep squat. And so the adductors produce hip extension. They also produce hip adduction rather. And I think that's why it happens. It also creates a quick stretch reflex in the glutes. As long as it's like in and out quick, I don't have a problem with it.
Adductor whip, right? That's the term that everybody likes to use. We're going to add one more question because somebody asked this one and we're talking about it already. They asked why I would feel my adductors more in the back squat. And without seeing the person's video, do you think that's probably the case? It's their adductor whip.
That's a good segue. Yeah, so a lot of people will feel their adductors work more. in the squats, and they think that that means there's something wrong. I think it's that factor that the adductor magnus produces 50% of the net hip extension torque in a deep squat. So I don't actually have an issue with that. I actually think that a lot of times when people say that their hamstrings are sore after squats, it's not their hamstrings that are sore, it's their adductors. And I think we kind of like to think of the leg and think like maybe there's these distinct areas where the adductors are here on the inside, the hamstrings on the backside, the quads on the front side. Really, the adductors and hamstrings are like kind of on top of each other quite a bit. We know from a lot of research that the hamstrings don't do a whole lot in the squat. So when people feel hamstring soreness the day after squats, I think it's usually the adductors.
It's a dissection is kind of weird, right? Like the vasoadductor membrane, like there's so many pieces of connective tissue that join them together. I mean, it's hard to really, other than reductionism and just doing an anatomical dissection, it's hard to justify them as not working like together in a lot of
I really wish I could go back to a cadaver lab now that have so much more experience coaching and treating. I had to do in physical therapy school in undergrad, dissect the human body to look at these different muscles. I don't think at that stage in my life I could appreciate this stuff, and I think doing it right now would just be completely eye-opening for things like that. That I know where they sit from looking at a book, but if I could go back and relook at that stuff and where the adductors and hamstrings insert, like it would just be groundbreaking stuff to re-examine.
Did you guys get to redact everything yourself, or did they have like, oh man, they didn't have guys that did it for you and you walked in and today we're looking, that's awesome.
No, and I don't know if you know this about me. I'm squeamish.
No, I didn't know that.
Oh, dude. Yeah, so I really did not like being in a cadaver lab. I don't like nasty smelling stuff, and some cadaver labs smell really bad.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes me a long time to warm up to something like that, but I think I could do it if I had to do it again. Fun fact, human brain feels exactly like what you think a human brain would feel like. Squishy, slimy, slippery. Like when you're holding it, you feel like you're going to drop it. Just so we're all clear, I have only done this in cadaver lab, nowhere else. We did it all.
That's awesome. In my experience with it, it was redacted for us. I kind of didn't like it because I felt like it was like they're trying to intentionally show you what they want to show you in it, and not necessarily how things work functionally together.
There's something different about like peeling back the different layers and feeling like how dense and tough scar tissue is. And when you actually feel that with your hands, or you see like what happens to a scalpel when you go through scar tissue and how quickly it dulls, that just makes you think about a lot of the old school mentality we have around certain things. Like we're going to foam roll scar tissue away. Like, dude, it took me 10 minutes and a scalpel to get through that guy's scar tissue. You're not going to foam roll your way through it ever. It's uniquely different when you do it.
Yeah, that is not to get too nerdy, but one of those interesting things that's exists in our world a lot more than other people's, with the term adhesions and scar and like mobilizing it and all that. It's kind of funny that there's people selling that out there, right? Like that you could believe that you could take a thumb or a tool and you could break scar tissue. This, super collagenous, like major.
The funniest example of that to me is people that come in to the clinic and they're like, yeah, I saw so-and-so and they were talking about all my knots and scar tissue in my upper traps. And I'm like, have you back squatted lately? And they're like, yeah, I did 300 pounds last week. I'm like, you had a 300-pound barbell on your upper traps. If anything was going to break up that scar tissue, it was the 300-pound bar. It's not going to be somebody poking on you for 5 minutes.
Right. That's awesome.
All right.
That's a nerd.
That's suggestions for home projects here of self-dissection or dissection of.
No. Don't do it yourself. Go find a surgeon who loves CrossFit, and we'll let you watch him work. So that's cool. Well, that was great. Thanks so much for letting us dig into your personal history and sharing these things with us. We'll be back next time. We're going to talk a little bit about important biomarkers and which ones that you kind of think are most applicable. So we'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Excellent.